Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning, SCWA turns our Facebook page over to a new author to talk about their books and their work. This morning, we're pleased to have with us Candi Sary. Candi's previous novel, Black Crow, right? Wow. What can you write? What is that? Black Crow,
White
Lie. Ooh, that sounds very suspenseful. Won the Reader Reviews Literary Award, and a SCWA, can we call it a SCWA?
Yeah.
And was runner-up in the Eric Hoffer Book Award. A mother of 2 adult children, she lives in Southern California with her husband, a dog, a cat, and several ducks. Welcome, Candi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Maddie.
Well, hey, congratulations on Magdalena.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a beautiful cover, a beautiful book. I read it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It's original. It's suspenseful in a way that most literary fictions is not. I think somehow you've cracked the code on that without, car chases and murders and all those other things, the artifice that writers use. When you read the book, you are on edge the whole time, turning pages, wanting to find out, dying to know what's real, what's not real, what's going to happen next. So let's talk a little bit about that. And did that come naturally to you when you were writing the story, or that suspense, that feeling of keeping the reader off balance, not knowing what's real? And
it actually did, because I didn't know what was going to happen. So as I wrote it, I wasn't always sure what was happening. And so I was curious. I mean, it took a long time. So I spent a lot of time getting to know the characters, and they sort of let me know what they're going to do. If I force them somewhere, it doesn't feel authentic. So yeah, so they kind of surprised me along the way.
Oh, all right. So we'll talk about the road to publication, but let's talk a little bit about the story itself. Do you want to share what the basic premise, or talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, we were just talking about how, I mean, I call it part ghost story, but like you were saying, it's not a true ghost story. It's about a woman who lives in a small secluded town. It's a kind of town that like thrives on gossip and superstition. And she's the town, Dottie is her name, and she's the town outcast. So her husband was in a terrible accident, and he lives in a rest home, unresponsive, and she had had 4 miscarriages, so she has no children, but still longs for the children she never had. Magdalena is the 15-year-old girl next door, and she's a sensitive. So she talks to ghosts, and she shows up at Dottie's door one day and offers to conjure a ghost. And she does. She really conjures a ghost, but Dottie is less intrigued with her supernatural abilities than with having a real girl in her home, someone that would have been the age of one of her daughters. So Dottie secretly and kind of obsessively starts to pretend that Magdalena is her daughter. And it really helps to heal her grief. But when Magdalena goes missing, the town looks at the town outcast and blames her. So this novel is basically a letter that Dottie is writing to prove her innocence, that she did nothing to harm Magdalena. So that's
what a great setup, and so original in the way that you tell the story. Now let's talk about it. This story is rooted in years of work, and probably changes. How close is this story to the original story that you imagined when you started? What did you tell me in 2012?
Yeah, so it started in 2012, but what's really funny is it started, the first 40 pages that I wrote, I gave to my daughter, and she was in film school at the time. And she read the first 40 pages and was like, no, there's only about 3 parts of this that I like. So we sat for about 2 hours brainstorming. And from those 3 parts, I sort of ventured into this newer version of the novel. And because she was a screenwriter, she was very visual, and we talked all those hours about the fog and the town. And so the setting really came to life from that brainstorming. So yeah, so it changed there. And then it continually changed, over the years. It took about maybe 3 years for the first draft, and then you know, sent it out, got some responses from agents, you know, some feedback, made some changes, sent it out again, worked with an editor, made more changes. So a ton of changes, you know, happened in the next several years.
So how about the characters? I mean, they're all very, even your secondary characters are strong and impactful. So, you know, we have Dottie, we have the ghosts, we have Magdalena, you know, the fact that I had this strange feeling when I read it that I didn't know who was living and who was dead and who knew that they were alive and who knew that they were dead, you know, because it's very interesting. I mean, like this is M. Night Shyamalan kind of thing, you know, it's really interesting. So when you were writing, it's complicated. Um,
Yeah.
did you write the characters first, or did they just come alive in terms of their function in the story, or how did that come about? How did
Yeah,
those
so they came alive and then they sort of developed into sort of different characters than I even started with. And that's where all the rewrites come in, I think, to make sense. But yeah, in the first draft, it's maybe a little more messy, you know, where I'm making sense of things. And I think it's with all the rewrites that, you know, things start smoothing out and seeming simpler. But yeah, the earlier drafts are a lot messier to get all this together, you know.
So on the ghosts, did you start out with ghosts or
Yes.
yeah.
You know, I recently read those first 40 pages I gave to my daughter, and the ghost. So Dottie, you know, in this version, her husband is in a rest home. In the original, her husband was actually around. He wasn't a nice guy. In this version, her husband's really sweet, what she remembers of him, but he wasn't a very nice guy. And she was sort of like intrigued with this ghost, this man, almost like, you know, that was where she found comfort. So there was always that concept of the ghost, of her finding comfort in the ghost.
So what was the most difficult part of writing the story for you?
What was the most difficult part? You know, making sense of it along the way, because there were things that just felt so right as I was going, like, I really want to write this, but why is this happening? You know, so there were some surprises later that brought everything together, and I just stuck with certain ideas that I just couldn't let go of, but I couldn't piece it together without making it feel forced. And so just kind of waiting, like letting it unfold for me. You know, so yeah, the time of, you know, just letting the story finish as it, you know, needed to.
And another thing that impressed me about the story is I mentioned I thought it was original, but it does not feel like anything else that I read. So when writers are talking about or getting advice, they're talking about, oh, you know, write what you want to write, or look what's selling, or write like people try to write like people they enjoy reading. How did you approach this and stay on the path to writing something so different and so original? Um,
You know, I think, you know, so the backstory is I started this the year that both my kids went off to college. And, you know, the empty nest was really hard on me in the beginning, especially anticipating it, I should say. And so again, I thought I was writing this ghost story, but the 15-year-old Magdalena next door, you know, kept pulling Dottie. There was this longing for her to have a child. And, you know, that part of the story just kept like tugging me. Like that seemed to be the thing that like really guided the story. And so my heart was just so in it. Like I wasn't even thinking about what I'm writing. I just felt Dottie so much. And it was only after I finished the first draft did I realize that this novel helped me mourn the empty nest. You know, this novel was my way of missing my children. It's not about empty nest, you know, the empty nest at all, but the longing in there, the, you know, finding herself, you know, because it's a lot about finding who she is alone. So a lot of that, I think, was just me needing to put that somewhere. And since I wasn't doing it necessarily directly, I did it through this character. And it was kind of comforting.
you know, it's so interesting that you felt that healing process writing the book, and Dottie feels that same, the mirror there. I mean,
Yeah.
Do you feel a vulnerability or an exposure? Sometimes people say, "Oh, I can read a writer's book and know everything about them." Uh, how do you feel about the upcoming release of the book?
I feel good. What's interesting is I don't feel vulnerable about fiction. I feel more vulnerable in an interview or, telling about myself, where I think maybe I am talking about myself in my fiction, but it's so nicely disguised. And so I'm comforted. It's my way of telling somewhat of my story, but it's so disguised because Dottie is really nothing like me, and so no one would know, but I find it, or I mean, each character does have a bit of the writer in there,
Yeah.
even those that don't appear to.
Well, and we were talking before about the vulnerability of writing and talking about your work, and also how easy it is for some people to promote other people. But you're such a generous person when it comes to other people's writing. I know you host events, and you're very outspoken about other people's work and will help them. What is the hardest part for you about talking about your work? What don't you like to talk about the most? And let's talk about that.
Yes,
Um,
it's funny. I don't know. It's so much easier to promote other people and say how great it is, but yeah, when it comes to my own stuff, I don't know. I'm going to have to explore that. It's just difficult,
so, yeah, and so many people that have written so and don't know, but that we know have written so many nice things,
Yeah.
glowing praise for the book.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
That feels really good because writing is so lonely. It's something you do, just without any eyes on it for so long. And then to actually have people read it. When my first book came out, Black Crow, White Lie, I was just thrilled when, people who don't know me read it, especially because, my friends, of course, they're going to tell me nice things, but, getting strangers to say nice things is like really exciting, and to hear how different they can interpret it, compared to maybe what I set out to write. I find that fascinating too, what readers take,
That how the lens that they view the story through, and
Yeah, it really is a dance, the reader and the writer, kind of working together. I find that fascinating.
so you've been we talked about this also, or you mentioned that you've been working on the book for a while.
Yeah.
How did you work on other things as well? Was this your sole focus, or
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend about that yesterday. I stay really focused because a writer friend was talking about how she works on so many different projects. And I said, no, you got to stay faithful to the one. It's like a relationship, your relationship with writing, because there comes a time when you're done with it where you're kind of like, things are getting boring, the spark isn't totally there. And, so we're talking about like, you have to spice up your relationship with that project to make sure that you stay there and reignite.
uh, what do you hope readers will feel when they finish the book? When they let's say read that last page and close the book and have to put it down. What do you hope that they feel?
I hope, I read because I want a different experience. I want to get to know different people. I want to experience, empathy or also something intriguing. Give me a unique setting, something not ordinary in my life. So I hope, they're entertained. I hope they're touched. I hope they fall in love with the characters. Yeah.
But do you have a copy of the book with you?
Yes.
Because the cover is beautiful.
It is. And it's funny because when I first saw the cover, when the publisher sent it to me, I said, but that's not Magdalena, because Magdalena is darker. She looks more like my daughter. And they said, no, this is the ghost. And so I was like, one of the ghosts. And so I was like, Oh, okay. So, so yeah,
Yeah.
I do love it.
It's beautiful. And so the book is coming out July 11th.
Yes.
So you have, do you want to talk a little bit about that event? So people.
Yeah, so July 11th, I'll be at Arvida Books with my friend and fellow Regal House author, Lisa Cupolo. She wrote Have Mercy on Us, that great book of short stories. So we'll be in conversation there, and it should be really fun at 5:30.
The characters are wonderful. The setting. I mean, if you read the first page of the book, with you were talking about the fog, I
Yes.
have that same feeling, about the fog and the ghosts, and it's evocative. And so, if you're looking for an experience as a reader, I highly recommend Magdalena. If you're a writer and you're looking for a book to read that is different, that is complex, that has suspense, it's a masterclass in suspense. Page turning in a literary fiction novel is so rare. If that's something you're interested in, I would suggest you pick up the book as well. If you can't, if somebody loans it to you, please leave a review. I'm sure Candy would appreciate a review as well. Is that correct? Or
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love reading reviews. Yeah.
and we wish you a lot of luck. Let us know how you do.
Oh, thank you, Maddie. You're
Yeah,
so
and come back anytime. I would love to talk to you more about how you decided to tell the story. I mean, the story itself is amazing, but how you decided to tell the story and lay it out, it's a whole other conversation, which we don't have time for, but hopefully we can do that again.
okay. Sounds great. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your morning to join us. If you would like to share this conversation, you can share this exact conversation on Facebook, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is SCWA Writers Online. Find our interview with Candi Sary, as well as hundreds of other interviews. So we hope you'll check that out. But until next week, we hope you take care of yourself, keep reading, and stay safe. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Candy.
Thank you.